Hi, Allison.
Hey, Simona.
How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be with you.
Well, good to have you here. We're kicking off this series on Everyday Leader, which I know you and I spend a lot of time talking about all the time. Leaders every day. We talk about leaders every day and we talk about everyday leaders. So this
Yes,
approach,
two and both.
two and both and. Quick introduction. I'm Simona. You know that, but maybe those who are watching this may not. And I lead the team at Idealis. And Allison, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Allison, and I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Idealist.
Awesome. This conversation is a chance for us to talk about something that we have spent quite a bit of time with our amazing team thinking about, writing about, and doing some research on over the last 6 months. And just to ground the conversation, we've seen something emerge in our data that is hard to ignore, which is we've got a lot of leaders out there who are super confident in what they do, and some might even say overconfident in what they do. We don't know anyone like that. But in our everyday leader data, which is tapping into the perspectives of over 50,000 people in the workplace today, um, we're seeing that we're right, that people are really confident, that 86% of the leaders that we surveyed actually feel really confident leading other people. But there's a gap. Because when we ask the people who are being led by those people, how are you feeling about leaders in the workplace? Only 63% of them are saying that their leaders are actually effective. So confidence isn't matching the competence or capabilities on the ground. That's a 23-point credibility gap. And one of the CEOs we just recently spoke to called that the bullshit gap. At the same time, what we're seeing is that the foundation underneath the confidence is actually eroding. So while people appear confident, that actually may not be true. People don't feel cared about, whether they're leaders or non-leaders. Manager care has dropped 5% over the course of the last couple of months. We're seeing that when people don't feel cared for by their leaders, they are experiencing lower engagement. They're not feeling like they're being developed as much. They don't find as much meaning at work. And in fact, some of the data that we're seeing, there are meaningful differences between leaders who care about their people and the outcomes of those people and the people who don't care about those people. When leaders don't care, particularly on how they find meaning in their work, we see a
Yeah.
drop from 88% for those who do have a manager who cares and find meaning at work to 52% when employees feel less cared for and therefore find less meaning in their work. So manager care means something, it creates meaning. The other thing I want
Yes.
to quick talk about is trust. Trust is sliding too. We have been tracking trust in people and organizations and strangers since the beginning of our research at our firm. And what we're seeing is people are losing faith in systems. So people don't trust the economy as much. They don't trust corporations. They don't trust their own companies. And we're watching how people trust their CEO and trust their colleagues. And we're seeing that start to shift as well. And so we're watching employees turn to their direct leaders and wonder, can I trust you? And particularly at a moment where they're feeling a little bit unsettled or uncertain, it's a real challenge for people and it therefore can hold back performance. When we put all of that together, we've got these really confident leaders, but then we've got this foundation of maybe things aren't going as well as they could be. And so, how do we translate those two things? It's not necessarily a skill problem. It actually might be more of an identity problem. Do leaders identify as leaders? And what does it mean to identify as a leader? And what does confidence as a leader look like? So the question for you is if you reflect on what you've been doing over the past 20 plus years, when you talk about leadership identity development, what is it? And how do people develop an identity of being a leader?
It's who am I as a leader? What matters to me the most? How do I articulate and live that out loud to the people around me? And then also, how aligned am I between what I say matters and what I care about through my lived experience? How is that aligning with the choices I'm making, the way I'm spending my time, the way I show up really every single day for the people around me? Because those are the things that cascade in the day to day across our organization. So that would be my like, what is this? But I think beyond that being a great working definition, I want to just maybe show you. So I'm going to entertain me for a second. I want to ask you a couple questions. Okay, Simona. So you're on the hot seat here.
Huh?
First thing, what is your earliest memory of leadership? Not like a role, but an experience. Your
Mm.
earliest memory, and what did you take from it that still kind of shapes you today?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I think it's my parents and then my sister.
Mm,
My parents, my dad used to do this thing, and this is so silly, but whenever he would go somewhere, immigrant family, we didn't have a ton of money growing up. I remember my dad would get to go to like an event here and there, and he would get something really special, like a piece of cake or cookies or something, and he would always bring them home in like a little napkin for us. And so when he did get to go somewhere special, he brought things home for us. And we would wait, like, did you bring something? What was it like? And we got to like live through his experience. And he always said, I always felt guilty experiencing something without you guys.
mm.
And if I think about that as like the patriarch of my family, that was a big part of growing up.
Yeah.
And still till this day, if I go somewhere and I enjoy something, I bring it back for my kids, I bring it back for my parents. To me, it was this servant leadership that was deeply embedded in how my dad saw the world. And he would bring anything that he got, he would come home and share it with us. So that's probably a
Yeah.
really super early form of leadership. And then my
Yeah.
sisters, she's 5 years older than me, and we were latchkey kids, just like anybody in the 80s. And if I was upset about something, my sister would always have my back and be like, yeah, that person was dumb, or like that person, right? She always had my back. But then she would be like, but what did you do?
Ooh, accountability on the back
She
end of
drove
that.
significant accountability. And she would be like, look, whatever happened, like I got your back, but you probably had a role to play too. And so very early on, I had a person
Yeah.
in my life who held me to account, but also gave me support. And I remember I would cry and she would be like, okay, here's the deal. You're going to wash away your tears and then it's over. And we would go to the bathroom, and I have memories of her being like, wash your face. And I would wash my tears away. And she's like, it's over now. And then it would be like, okay, it's over. And so I don't know. There was this, I don't know if I knew that it was leadership back then.
Right.
We didn't call it leadership. It was like
No.
how
But it was
she
like
treated.
love, compassion, accountability. But, and
Correct.
also, it sounds like she was there with you through it. Like she stayed
Yeah,
with you, wash your face. All right, now we're moving on.
that's it.
I love
That's it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't think of it as leadership at the time, but it
No.
certainly shapes your values and your behaviors over time. Yeah.
I mean, I think about if we can ask our team, right? When people struggle, it's like, okay, we're gonna wash our faces. We're
Yeah.
gonna get back on the saddle and
Yeah.
keep trying again, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a leadership style. I probably, now that I'm thinking about it, it came a lot from my
Absolutely.
own family.
Yeah. All right, I have another question for you.
Okay. By the
Think
way,
about
you
a
have to answer these
time.
questions too at some point. I'm just saying.
Think about a time or a moment in your career when you realized that leadership wasn't necessarily about a position, because that's what we're really seeing in this everyday leader stuff is there's this untapped position or this untapped potential that doesn't have the position or necessarily the title, right? And so I want to talk about that. So a moment in your career when you realized it wasn't necessarily about the position or title, it was really about who you were and how people experienced you. What
Mm.
shifted for you when you realized that?
In grad school, I remember there was this taxonomy by these researchers called French and Raven. And it's one of the papers I remember the most vividly because it talks about these five different types of power. And there's, positional power, there's information as power, there's likability as power, there's the power to reward, there's a power to punish. There are all these different power bases, as they called them. And I remember having a moment being
Yeah,
like, oh, wait a second. Power isn't positional. It was in grad school. I was like, power isn't positional. Power could be information. Power could be you're followed and respected. It could be that you can coerce and punish. Like people have the power to do that even if they're not in a position. People can hold back information from you. I remember that vividly because it changed the way I thought about power, which oftentimes people think about for leadership, that people who are leaders have power.
right, right,
And Matthew
right.
McCarthy, former
Yeah,
CEO of Ben& and Jerry's, who you and I just did a session with, often talks about the CEO being the most dangerous person in the room. And I love when he says that because he says the CEO is the most
yeah,
dangerous
I
person
love
in the room
that.
because they have the most power and the least information. And
Yes.
I think what I realized early on is if I have information, which I remember being like a junior person, sitting with the president or CEO of a company that I was working with, as a person who was working in the company, so at Bloomberg, sitting with Dan Doctoroff, and I had a piece of data that he didn't have. And all of a sudden I was like, I
Hmm.
have power. And it's not about having power over someone,
Yeah.
which position sometimes kind of alludes to
Yeah.
that, like, oh, you have power over someone. This is actually, I have power to have
Right.
impact. And so now I have a piece of data that can have
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And you feel empowered to use it.
I feel impact, exactly. And
That's
then the
amazing.
conditions are created for me to actually say that. So Dan Doctoroff would create the space to say, you're sitting at the table. What do you know that we're not talking about? And so I watched someone in a position of power create the space for those who were empowered to actually speak. And so that's why my earliest experience of realizing, oh, when I have data or information or an experience to share, that's powerful. And that doesn't mean I have to have a title or a certain salary band to exert that
Right.
power.
Right. Now, if you fast forward to today and you think about Idealists and the work that you do, what are the values that you feel most responsible for carrying with, whether it's with our team, with our clients, or with the cultures that you're shaping both internally, but also with those that we work with? Like, how do you try to live those values out loud across those spaces today?
When we started Idealists, there were a set of values that I wrote down on a piece of paper and I said, this is what I will be, and this is what I want our team to be. And then I hired to that, we coach to that, we give feedback to that. And those values were actually three, and then we added a fourth because someone joined our team and said, I think this is a fourth value. So we added it. And that's smart, kind, driven, and then the added one was helpful.
Mhm.
And smart is smart enough to know what we know and smart enough to know what we don't know.
Yep.
And kind is not the equivalent of being pushovers, but it's approaching things with kindness so that we sort of collectively nurture and nourish one another's spirits and personalities and morality and dignity so that we can treat one another with kindness while we're doing hard things. Driven, I mean, that one's pretty easy, but it's not driven to compete and put kick people down while you're rising up. I've been in cultures like that are eat what you kill. And no, this is about being driven for impact and being driven to work together to do something special and important in the world. And then helpful was added by Julia Wyckoff, who happens to be my best friend and
Shout out.
joined. Shout out to Julia. And when she joined to help us out on a couple of things, she was like, you guys are really helpful. Like everybody on your team is like, how can I
That
be
is
helpful?
great.
How can I be helpful? And I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? We are helpful. And our clients say we're helpful. Like we show up when they're struggling and say, how can we be helpful?
Yeah.
And so that's a value. So I think those four, if I think about my childhood, those are probably core values of my childhood. And then I've lifted those into the company. And then we've luckily been able to find people who embody them. I think as a firm, we have two values when we're out in the world, which is having a level of authority, like knowing what we're talking about and having data and research and backing and expertise, but also being authentic.
Yeah.
And I think authority and authenticity sometimes feel like they should clash, and they do clash. Like you can't possibly know what you're talking about and just be that real.
Yeah.
And I think we're saying, no, no, actually, both of those things not only can be true, but need to be true. And I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of my own personal value set.
What I heard, just as you even reflected that back, so that kind of demonstrates this whole leadership identity thing, I think, in practice, is that I heard your dad in that. I heard your sister in that, right? This kind but driven, like, I'm going to help you and we're going to get through this, but then you're going to wash your face off and keep going, right? That clear is kind, even in that example you just shared about where your expertise comes from. Uh, your desire for data as you go forward to provide advice so that it's not one without the other gives you authority and empowers people to act on. That to me is what leadership identity is. It's taking the
Mm.
time. And the fun fact is you don't have to wait till you're a CEO to do that. That is how identity is built. It's you continuing to go back and think it through, pull the threads to get really clear about what matters, because then you are able to share it off the cuff like you just did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder, I'd love your perspective on, do you find that leaders trust themselves? Because what I heard you say is, and I hadn't even thought about it, right? I never connected who my dad as the, sort of leader in our household. My mom, by the way, is maybe the fiercer leader in my household. We have a whole separate conversation about
Yeah.
that. But how that has shaped how I lead Idealists, right? Like that moment of reflection. And that probably should give me, I would think, greater trust in myself to
Yes.
lead. What's your sense?
That is what an insightful question, because that's at the heart of it. So, if you were to look at like a leadership identity development model, it starts with like you being able to look around. The president is the leader, my coach is the leader, my teacher is the leader. So it's all very external, like what you said. At what point did that turn internal? When was the first time you remember um, leading? And oftentimes people will go to a title or a role initially. And then when you push them a little bit further, well, what was the first time where you felt like you were leading, but you couldn't do it alone? You realized it was beyond what one person could do, and you actually had to engage people around you. And that became leadership in a new context. And it starts to help you move it from the external, which we can all think about the managers we've worked for, the CEOs, where everything is external and all they're doing is reacting to the environment. What's the P&L say right now? What is our consumer market saying right now? What are our shareholders and investors saying? And then they're continually reacting. And when they do that, people lose trust because they're like, wait a second, I need clarity. And what do you stand for?
Mm,
Like, what are you not going to move on? And
mm,
when they
mm.
develop that internal voice to match what's going on in the context, then you meet the context with your values. And when you do that, that's a totally different ballgame in terms of building your own courage and agency, as Matthew, to your point, speaks a lot about, is regaining agency over your experience. But it is also what gives other people confidence, trust, a desire to work with you to accomplish what you want to accomplish. It's not coming from an external motivator. It's coming much more intrinsically.
Well,
People
and if I
take
think
pride.
about how, as you described it, I think as a leader, and I feel this even leading Idealists in the team, I can't control external factors.
No,
I can't
and you're
control the,
never going to be, and you're going to die trying.
yeah, I'm going to die trying, and I might die trying. I mean, I literally
We
thinking
all try.
on firm, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just wish we could hold everybody steady and make sure we have the right kinds
Yes,
of clients. And this is every single day. And that's exhausting.
yes,
And for the team, it's probably exhausting to watch. And I think every leader we work with feels that. It's like, how do I control? Because part of what's probably gotten them to a position of significant leadership is the ability to sort of take some control and figure things
yes,
out. And
absolutely.
then all of a sudden, you're now on like this great open field. And there could be lightning strikes at any moment. And you're like, how do I negotiate, navigate? And the truth is, you just don't know.
You don't
And
know.
and so the only thing you do know is who you are. And if you haven't spent the time figuring that out, that makes it really hard to navigate uncertainty. And then if you have a group of people around you who are also trying to avoid the lightning strikes and they don't know you, it's really hard to build the followership and the trust that enables that group to coalesce. And so if I think about my own journey, even as CEO of this firm, and I'm a first-time CEO, I've had to figure it out. I have an advisory team and group and people who are honest with me about how things are going, which helps a lot. But I've had to become much more clear on who I am and make that clear to others. Hey, when things are hard, this is what we do, right?
Yeah,
We double
yeah,
down, we don't cut corners. And if I wasn't clear on that, I think it's super hard for a team to get behind you. So that's part of
yeah,
what I think we're seeing in this trust gap of I might be confident, but people don't feel confident in me unless I'm really clear on my own leadership identity,
yeah,
which
yeah,
then breeds significant confidence both for myself and for those who are looking to me. And the lightning strikes for someone who doesn't have a position of authority in a company is still a lightning strike. So just because you don't have
exactly.
a title doesn't mean it's still not hitting you. And I think that's sometimes the most empowering message of you still need to know where you stand. And by the way, sometimes courage is contagious. So
Yes.
if you figure out who you are and your boss is wavering, you might be the steady hand that helps your boss get through stuff. Your boss is human too. And
Yeah,
I've had
yeah,
so many people, you being
true.
one of them, who said, okay, look, I know this seems crazy, but look, don't forget, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what I've seen you do in the past. This is what I believe. And then you sort of lock arms and you can dance through the lightning strike. And I think there's a feeling sometimes when you're in a position of authority that you're alone,
Hmm.
or when you're lacking position and authority that you don't have agency or impact. And actually, both of those things are completely wrong. And I feel like our research is reinforcing that.
I guess as we're starting to wrap up, I'm curious if there's anything else from this everyday leader thing that you would want to make sure we chat about this morning.
Yeah. I think one of the things we have seen show up, and I actually just had a conversation with Anne on our team about this, about the extent to which people show up consistently in all of the environments that they're in.
Yes.
And we did our report on parenting just a
Yes.
couple of months ago. And we noticed that parents who are leaders are actually far more satisfied, they feel engaged than leaders who are not parents. So non-parent leaders versus parent leaders. We looked at the
Yes.
experience. And our theory behind that is parenting is a leadership job.
Yeah.
We may not see it as a form of leadership, but there are parents everywhere leading their household, leading hard dinner table conversations. And that same leader is showing up at work at the conference table. So the dining table leader and the conference table leader is the same.
Yes.
And when people see a leader in those different walks of life acting consistently with consistent values, they feel more trust.
Yeah.
I remember I worked for a CEO once and I saw him with his kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy's amazing. And then I saw him with employees and I was like, where did that guy go?
Right. Yeah.
And I think the opportunity leaders have sometimes they miss, people sometimes call it vulnerability, they call it authenticity. I think it's consistency. It's be the person you are. Like if you're a jerk, be a jerk all the time,
That's right. That's right. At
right?
least then people decide, do they want to get behind that or do they not?
Bingo. But when you leave me wondering,
Yeah.
now I'm in the moment of like, I can't trust you because I can't make sense of you. And now I'm spiraling, trying to figure out, are you that version or are you this version? And I think a lot of times we change who we are as leaders because we think the context calls for it.
Yeah.
Oh, at work, I need to be the tough guy leader. And at home, I need to be the soft dad. And it's like, hold up a second. Who do you, your identity point, who are you? And then carry that forward. And it's so much easier to live your life then on all fronts.
Yeah. Well, you had mentioned the one other thing you wanted to talk about was this manager care, which we all know, which has been a part of your profession, mine for forever. But when we saw that data, it really locked in for me the difference between it just being a human factor and being a performance factor. I mean,
100%.
that gap you talked about, it was like th a 30% difference when people feel care and when they don't. And so I'm curious about that for you when you think about that from all the roles you've been in and as an advisor now to companies.
Yeah.
How do you talk about it as about performance, not just about people seeing it as being soft or coddling or, just building a supportive work environment where everybody feels happy?
The question we ask is, does my manager care about me as a person?
Yeah.
We don't say, does my manager give me a hug when we walk through the door? We don't say, does my manager give me an out when I don't perform? No, it's does my manager care about me as a person, as a human being? Does my
Mhm.
manager care about me? It's pathetic that 50% of the workforce in the US don't feel cared about as a person.
As a person. Yeah.
That means the person you work with the most, who you are putting your career and your livelihood in the hands of,
Yeah.
doesn't care about you as a person. 3,000 respondents over the last 18 months. We are at about 50%. That's a problem. It like makes me mad because we're not
Oh,
asking for a manager to coddle, to make excuses. We're asking for managers, and what people are asking for is, can you just see me as a human being for all of the dignity that I hold, for all of the potential that I hold, for all of the mistakes I will make because I am human, for all of the
mhm.
things that I need because I live a full life, for all the challenges that I'm facing because life is hard. That's all they're asking for. And they're not getting it from a lot of places.
No,
They're,
a lot of people are being asked to check their personhood at the door based on
yes.
this data.
And then when people come to us often and say, like, I don't know why we're not able to achieve the strategy we put in place and the priorities that we have, and our performance is lagging, and maybe what we need to do is let people go. Hold up a second. What have we done with the people you have? What you miss if you don't engage the full person is the strength of that full person, which
Yes.
means, right, this unfulfilled potential concept. You've got people who are not giving you their all because you're not tapping into all that they are.
Yeah.
And so when a manager thinks this is the soft stuff, it's actually the hard stuff that we're
Yeah.
avoiding. And
Yeah.
if you do that hard work, you will get more out of the people. But when you do the easy part, I have KPIs, I have metrics, I manage by dashboard, I send the occasional, hey, how are you text message. You're not getting the best out of people, and people
No.
want to give you their best. Most people don't wake up in the morning saying, today I want to be a B player. They just don't.
I have a coaching client for Idealist right now who we learned through their human story lived in a war-torn um, country as they were growing up. They had to fight for everything from their safety to their family to their house to their food, shelling when they were on the school bus going home, and they were able to navigate all of that. And they've made sense of it today. It's who they are from a leadership identity standpoint. They are a survivor. And I am certain that their CEO does not realize that piece of who they were. And yet, that same CEO likely has a part of their company that is fighting to survive. And they're not sure, can it make it? Well, the person I'm coaching might not be the one that has the title, but if you take his survivor mentality and apply it to that business that is struggling right
Oh,
now, they're going to survive. He just has figured out how through his lived experience. That's leadership identity over title coming to play. So
yes.
I love this whole topic. We could go on for days. We
Oh, for
won't,
days. I mean, good thing we
but
can. We just won't do it
yeah,
on
we
video.
will. We
Yeah.
will. We will continue to do it.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Well,
but
thank
thanks
you.
for
Thank you.
indulging my questions since you didn't know what they were going to
I had
be.
no idea. I mean, I literally just rolled up. This is here we are. But
Here
it
we are.
was such an interesting conversation, and I hope it sparks more conversations amongst people who might listen. So thank you. Thank you for
Absolutely.
starting the conversation and for ending it with me.
Absolutely. All right. Talk
Okay.
to you later.
Yeah.